Hello again everyone, and as you probably guessed from the title of the video and the title on the screen right now, today's episode is going to be about animation. It's the first in what I think is going to be a three-part series we're going to do on animation. And to start off, we need to start off by talking about what animation is and how it works and how we can use it. And for that we need to go over a bit of history and back to the way animation used to be done. So let's get started. So the beginning of animation was when people used to draw out each frame as a separate picture, and that would be compiled into a video. And say for example we try a basic animation, like for example if we want this cube here to move across the screen, you'd have the cube pictured and drawn out on every single one of frames required to go across. So from frame 1 it would have a picture of a cube, all the way up to frame 50 it would have another picture of a cube, and that's how that would work. And that would actually be working on a series of different types of frames and who drew different types of frames, and that's on the next slide. If you had a important frame like the beginning of the animation, that would be called a keyframe, and that would be drawn by someone high up in the animation team or someone leading the animation team, and the last frame would also be a keyframe. And all the frames in between that, where the cube is moving across, that will be an in-between frame, or a tween. If you've done any flash animation, you'll know motion tweens, that's where tweens comes from. And tweens would be drawn by people sort of lower down, or the secretary of whoever's doing the animation would draw those kind of things in between each keyframe. Now this would take a long time, and the advantage of being able to do computer animation means that you don't have to draw any in-between frames. Well, you don't have to draw anything, but you don't have to set any in-between frames. They are created automatically. So, and the final thing is about smooth motion. As the cube moves across, note how in this animation it starts off slow, gets quicker in the middle, and finishes off by slowing down to a smooth stop. And that can be done in keyframed animation in Blender automatically. So instead of having jerky motion, you automatically get these smooth motion, and in a future tutorial we're going to talk about how to edit our motion to suit the animation we're trying to create. So I'm just going to go Alt Tab into a new scene in Blender, and we're actually just going to try and mimic what we've seen a minute ago in Blender here. So I'm going to keep the default cube, and we're going to have a look at the timeline we've got at the bottom. So we've got a few things to look at. First of all, we've got this sort of grid of numbers, and that's basically all of our frames. So if I click and drag my mouse, you see the little green bar is our current frame, and we can drag through our timeline. We've got a few numbers down here. This little box here is our current frame, so I can also click this across, or use the right arrow key on the keyboard or the left arrow to move backwards. I can use the up arrow on my keyboard to jump 10 frames, and that is not working because we haven't got any keyframes to jump to. And we also have start of the animation, so that this animation starts at frame 1. You can set it to 0, but you can't go any beyond that. And this animation ends at frame 250. And this can also be found in our render settings, and that's where you can change your frame rate as well. If you're working with a specific video, you can change it to match the video. You can change where your frame works. And the other thing we've got is these little playback controls. So we've got a play forwards, which you can see just plays it through in real time, and then play backwards, then back to the next keyframe, back to the beginning, the end, and forward to the next keyframe. But we haven't got any keyframes, so that's not going to work. So that's the basics of the timeline. Now we're going to have a look at what we can do to set keyframes and move our cube around. So say for example I wanted my cube to start over here, and on frame 1 this is where I want it to be. To set a keyframe, what you do is you hit the I key for insert, and oh, lost it. There we go. We get a whole list of different keyframes. We have location, rotation, scaling, then a mixture of the two, and then these visual location and delta location. We don't have to worry about those for now. But what I want is literally a location. Sorry. So I'm going to insert a location keyframe, and you see as soon as I do that, a few things change. First of all, up here, all our values for location have turned yellow because there's a keyframe on that frame, and if I go across they'll go green to show that that value is animated. Down here on the keyframe you notice the name of the cube is gone orange, and down here in the timeline you see we've got a little yellow line that indicates that there is a keyframe. And that's as easy as it is. Literally, you go to the end of the animation, say this animation I think should be 50 frames long, so I'm just going to go to the end of the animation by hitting that button, move it on the x-axis. Now this is important, if you then move away it resets back to your first keyframe, so you've got to make sure you set another keyframe here. You see that all updates, and now if I go, so here, Blender has already worked out the in between frames for this cube's motion. And if I were to go back to the beginning and hit play, you see our cube now moves across the screen just as we want. And that's really the very basics of motion. You can see we've automatically got that smooth motion. If I just set it up the same as the other one, see that cube moves across the screen, and it starts off slowly, gets quicker in the middle, and then speeds up. And that's all created automatically. I mean, if you wanted, you could go into the camera view and render this out. I'm not going to for this particular purpose. And in the next episode I'm going to talk about different interpolations and how you can do different values in your animations to suit your needs. So, my name is Nick Pearson, thank you very much for watching this video.